Hello, welcome to That Service Dog Show. First, I'd like to apologize. I've had some technical difficulties with uploading the last couple of videos, so I know I'm behind. So I'm going to try to change some things up so that hopefully this won't happen again. I've also had a few cancellations regarding some of my interviews that I've had lined up. So I'm having to shift some and seek out new interviewees. So, for anyone who would like to be on the show, please feel free to reach out. But for now, please hit the like button and subscribe so that you will know when the videos are uploaded and share to anyone that you feel would appreciate this kind of content. Also, feel free to reach out to me on X and Facebook under That Service Dog Show. Or if you don't feel comfortable with leaving comments there or here on YouTube, you can reach out to me under the same name, That Service Dog Show at yahoo.com, to send me an email. Now, what topic are we going to discuss today? If you've read the title of this video, you already know. This one is near and dear to my heart because I've recently undergone this situation myself. At what point should we ethically start to retire our service dogs? And this isn't a hard and fast rule because if one went by age alone, then it undercuts a lot of other issues that can affect a dog. But the end result should be to give the dog as happy and healthy retirement as possible. So, not working our dogs into the ground and waiting until they cannot enjoy life to the fullest as pets before we finally allow them to retire. However, age should be one issue that goes into that decision. Thinking ahead on this issue before you even get a dog at all, such as what is the average life expectancy for the breed I'm looking for? If the dog's life expectancy is on average 7 to 9 years, working up to or beyond that minimum life expectancy can be not only difficult for the dog, but unethical. Now, this doesn't mean that, German Shepherds, for example, have a life expectancy of 7 to 10 years. But you may have known a dog or two that exceeded that life expectancy. But when we go into this, we need to look at the average to be better prepared for how to move forward. This way, you know when to start preparing to get your next prospect and add in time for if the first litter or two or more of the pups that you look at have zero candidates who have the correct temperament for this incredibly difficult job, because this is not a job that every dog can or should do. And let's be honest, with as rare as a temperament as we're looking for that we need for this job, every litter is not going to have even one potential prospect. And unfortunately, a lot of, especially backyard breeders, but even some respectable breeders, they may or may not feel comfortable with saying, okay, yes, we will hold this litter until it's temperament tested, and then you get the pup that has the correct temperament tests. Now, most reputable breeders that I've come in contact with, that I know, they actually match up the puppies with the home life that is expected from the buyers. So it's not so much as, all right, I need you to go ahead and give me your deposit. Okay, now you get to choose between collars, blue or orange. You're not going to know if blue or orange or purple or green has the correct temperament. So, looking for breeders that will actually work with you to get the kind of dog you need, unfortunately, is very rare. And for those breeders who will not work with you on making sure that you're getting the right fit, they're breeders that you pretty much want to walk away from anyway, because the goal of reputable breeders is to match the dog with the home so that that dog goes to its forever home, not that, oh, I'm sorry, this dog actually is not going to fit into our lifestyle. So that is one thing to look into because, again, it takes a while. And whenever I was looking for my boxer, I actually spent 4 years looking for a breeder that did the health testing and the temperament testing, or would allow for temperament testing. I went through so many different breeders looking and contacting them, and it was either no, we don't temperament test our litter, we do not place our dogs with the homes that correctly matches up with that dog's temperament, or we don't want someone to come in here and temperament test our dogs. Okay, well, I guess I won't be getting a dog from you. So yes, it actually took me over 4 years, 4.5 years actually. And I started early, way early, because I promised my husband that whenever I first got General, who is a German Shepherd mix, that I would do my best to get a boxer for my next service dog, because that has always been the breed that he grew up with. We've already had 2 previous boxers since we've been married. And so, of course, we knew what we were going into whenever it came to that breed. But it always helps if you can kind of work a breed in with your family. A golden retriever or a Labrador would not have fit well with what we actually wanted. I went with General simply because of the fact that, German Shepherds were the breeds that I've always grown up with, and that was what I was looking for. And that was before I knew that German Shepherds actually don't have a high success rate. But again, since I made that promise with my husband, I started looking long before I even had the inkling that I was going to need one, well before I had originally anticipated. So, which was good because I ended up needing a service dog prospect well before I originally thought. But so that is one reason why you need to really work in that extra wiggle room. And as far as health issues, dogs are inanely good at hiding their symptoms of aging because they still have those genetics from when they were still part of a pack. Their ancestors, they had to show that they were strong enough to bring worth to the pack. Because a weakened member of the pack could put the entire pack at risk. So even though, our dogs typically don't have to worry about, they don't have to worry about going and hunting for their dinner and escaping from other wild animals. Those genetics are still in there. So by the time a dog actually shows that they are slowing down or in pain, they've actually been hiding it for quite some time. So waiting until the dog is showing these symptoms to start to consider easing the dog and its work schedule isn't what's usually best for the dog overall. And I'm going to be working in, very wide generalities for this video, but, as a whole, you don't want to wait until the dog is already showing signs of aging to be like, oh, now it's time for me to start looking for my next dog. Will there always be times where things come up unexpectedly? Of course. But this should be one of the first markers looking toward in the discussion of when to retire a service dog. And I can hear it already. But Tone, my dog loves to work. So my vet said that if my dog wants to go ahead and let him work. Yes, I hear that a lot in some of the community pages. When this topic comes up, first, this is usually the comment that is said by someone who hasn't actually discussed their service dog's working life with a vet who actually is knowledgeable on service dogs. Not your average run-of-the-mill vet that, you take them in, they do the neutering, the spaying, the vaccinating, the once a year check to make sure the dog is up to date on this and that, and then send you on your way. Those vets usually do not have a high level of knowledge of what it actually takes to be a service dog, physically or even mentally. It's, it's kind of sad. It's just like with our human doctors. A lot of times they may not be up to date on some of our medical issues that we actually require our service dogs for. With any specialty, it's something that if they've not actually had to put in the time and effort to learn about, they're not going to know about. But I've actually noticed that many of the handlers feel that if they say that their vet has said XYZ, then that will end all discussion. Oh, well, your vet says that it's okay for your dog to work even though it's limping and it's physically in pain. Yes, I've seen that. I've heard that. Not likely. But again, unless a vet specializes in service dogs, this wouldn't really be an educated comment to start off with. But for those dogs who do love to work, I empathize. I recently had to retire my first service dog before he was at a senior level. We actually came to the decision of needing to start working him towards retirement before he even turned 6 years old. Due to developing arthritis from multiple attacks by pets, a few here at the house, from neighbors who allow their dogs to roam, and a couple out and about. He's been nearly killed on 4 separate occasions. So he has developed some really bad arthritis, and with him being a mixed breed, he already had a predisposition of having bad health and joints from this mix. Because he had a mix of large dog and small dogs, and if you line those hips, they don't really line up. So again, he was already at a predisposition, and those attacks just kind of expedited the need to retire. So as a side note, mixed breeds do not automatically mean that they are healthier than the health-tested purebred dogs. In fact, they tend to actually be just the opposite. But the various outlets that have pushed this misbelief have pushed this incorrect narrative to try to guilt people into not looking for reputable breeders, the kind of breeders that their dogs don't end up in shelters. Because if you need to get rid of your animal for one reason or another, it's in your contract saying that the dog has to go back to them, and if they find out otherwise, you're going to get sued. Reputable breeders stand by their dogs for life. Anyway, I've lived this experience of having a dog who felt like he should still be able to work and would, quite frankly, get upset when he was slowly left behind at home. More and more. I got those dirty looks from my dog, the whole, I can't do my job if you leave me at home. But as his owner and his handler, I had to make the tough choice for him that he needed to no longer be pushed to work, even though he loved it. I slowly started to leave him home for the trips that wouldn't be quick. I even got him a stroller to start using for when there would be a lot of walking, such as trips to the mall or to the zoo. He's 30 pounds, so he's smaller, so it's not like trying to load up a 90-pound German Shepherd into a large dog stroller. But and before I get comments, yes, a service dog can legally use a stroller in public and can do their jobs depending on the task. As an example, from day one, General was taught touchless alerts for when we were in the car. This being a service dog, touching a driver can legally be considered distracted driving in many states. You'll need to check your own state's laws for distracted driving, or you could actually reach out to your local district attorney to ask a couple of different questions to help decide whether or not you're in one of those states. Also, if you have a loose dog in your car and have an accident, many times you can be charged with distracted driving, just simply having your dog loose in your car, which is just one more reason why many service dog teams have either impact crates in their cars to transport their animals, or a harness with a seatbelt. Never use a seatbelt on a collar, because you're in an accident, or if you just have to make a quick break, the dog's going to go forward and you can snap their neck. But in either case, loose dogs are usually not the best way to go. So it's something to think about, even if right now you've never had an issue. Going forward, it's something to consider. But anyway, General was taught to alert without touching me when I was driving. This translated well into using those alerts for when he was in his stroller, such as, say that I am about to stop breathing. My oxygen levels randomly drop, or even for the behavior interruption. All right, let's say while I'm driving, I'm scratching and I don't realize it. And, I'm getting ready to scratch to the point where I'm about to bleed. He would pound that paw onto the seat to get my attention, to alert. He started to do this on his own for my behavior interruption. And once he started doing that on his own, I added training so it was consistent. And then whenever it came for my oxygen alerts, he would get into a habit of, it's kind of hard to explain, but alternating his paws. So that's just one way that you can teach your dog to alert you while they're in their crate, or they are seat belted, or they are in the floorboard, because that's actually better if you're going to have them in the seat to be, or in the main part without a impact crate. Floorboards tend to be a little bit safer than the actual seat, especially in the front seat with the airbag. So that is one way that you can teach. Some train their dogs to use buttons or bells, both for in the car and for strollers. So that is something else that that you can work with for touchless alerts. And with using his stroller, he was able to work a little bit longer, since being in a stroller, his arthritis really doesn't affect him. And technically, I could continue to work him with his stroller. But doing so, unfortunately, means that he would be looked at as less by not only the public at large, but the service dog community as well. Although on his stroller, he actually has a garden flag that hangs on it saying that he alerts to oxygen levels, and for people who can't do his job, to leave him alone. But even with his current health and with the stroller training, I may still be able to throw him into, coming out of retirement a little bit for limited use, such as when Alexandra goes into heat, because I will not ethically work her while she's in heat. And that would be another time where ethics versus, personal opinions may vary. But let's face it. How many of us have always complained about people who take their pets out under the guise of them being a service dog when you know that they're not a service dog? Their behavior says that they're not a service dog. Because I hear people saying, well, I'm going to work my dog even if she's in heat because a male service dog should be able to control himself. Okay, well, that doesn't really, negate the issue of the pets. And to me, that just puts my female at a greater risk. If she's got a neon sign saying I'm in heat, come and jump me. Okay? But when she's in heat, I may be able to take General to a doctor's appointment, for instance, still, because even with his arthritis, I could put him in a stroller or, just going into my doctor's appointments. The ones that aren't at the hospitals, they don't require a lot of walking going in. But that's neither here nor there. Got a little off track a little bit. The fact of the matter is, he was used to working. And while I eased him into retirement so as not to harm his mental health as we pulled back, I knew that for his own physical health, that's Alexander. All right, sorry. But for his physical health, go lay down. He would need to retire within a year once I noticed that he was being affected by his arthritis. So he would attend some doctor's appointments, for instance, which required very little movement, as I've already said. But as he started to limp from arthritis, he stopped going on my grocery runs. I take him for maybe 1 or 2 items, just enough for him to, feel like he's out and about and doing something. But I would no longer take him out if I was planning to go get a cart's worth. He was lucky. He didn't have a sudden health issue that caused him to immediately be pulled, such as having an amputation or perhaps losing some of his vision so that he'd have to be pulled so that he could relearn. And I'm not going to lie, I actually would not work my dog if he lost either his sight or his hearing. Again, I feel it's an ethical issue as well as a safety issue for everyone involved. But as I said, he was lucky. Instead, I was able to set a date, pull out the calendar and be like, okay, that on this day, he's officially going to be retired. I'm no longer going to take him out on my everyday errands. I'm not going to take him out for this or that, even doctor's appointments. On this date, I will consider him retired. This was especially hard on me since he can detect my oxygen levels, whereas my dog who's taking over for him doesn't have that ability. So I do suffer from having to go out without him. But as handlers, we should never put our own health above that which is what is best for our 4-legged partners. This is why we are called a team. We don't just think about ourselves. If we can't put our dogs first, then we should not have them. We ask so much from them as it is. We do not have the moral right to ask more from them, to do even more at their own expense for their own health. So yes, in addition to the dog's age, we need to put the dog's health into the equation of when to retire our dogs, because they deserve a long life as a pet, as long of a life as we can give them after they retire from service dog work. It should not be, okay, General's retired on Friday. he's been buried on Sunday. That should not really be how this goes. You as a human, do you want to work until you can no longer function and live a good, high quality standard of life yourself? Or those of you who don't work, much like, I'm not able to, if you were still able to work, would you not also still want to be able to, at the end of your job's work day, be able to be like, okay, I've put in this amount of time for work. Now, something as simple as I'm going to watch my own TV show. A little bit of an enjoyment. We owe our dogs some enjoyment in life after they've gone into retirement. Simply because, again, we have asked so much from these animals, and they've given us a new lease on life that we would not have without them. So it is our way of giving back to them. Unfortunately, the ADA doesn't offer any guidance on this issue, sadly, just like a lot of other things, such as, the minimum age of whenever a service dog should be considered a service dog, or, health issues. You just have to walk around through some of the various Facebook pages, and you can read through, especially if you go to some of the blacklist pages and the call out pages. But you don't even have to go that far. You can actually go to any of the theme park pages or your state's local page, and you can see a plethora of animals that are being worked that they've seen their best days behind them already. And many times you can see a dog that, okay, this dog's life expectancy is 10 years old. Well, this one has somehow made it to 13. They're still being worked. I actually have seen something like this near me, where this poor Chihuahua is so old that it can no longer even hold its tongue in its mouth. And this woman's still taking it out everywhere, which I actually have concerns on whether or not it was the service dog ever to start off with. But whether or not it ever was, at this point, it's so old that what task is it actually able to continue to perform would be a question that I personally would ask. If it was mine, I would have retired long before it got to that point. I've seen someone whose dog has had a stroke and is still being worked. And much like, humans, some can jump back fairly well after a stroke, but many cannot. And it's those that you can see that this dog did not really bounce back very well after the stroke, and it's still being worked. So it does call into question the ethical standard of should this dog still be working. And it would help if the ADA would give a better guideline on each end of the spectrum. So a dog like General, he has joint issues. But unlike General, there are many people who work dogs with joint issues with no plan for retirement. Or, there'll be times where people are like, well, I just can't afford to get a new dog right now. That really has no place in this discussion, because this discussion isn't about you. It's not about me. It's about the dog. It's not the dog's fault that you've not planned well enough to have a little bit set aside for whenever it's time for him to retire. His 401k plan, if you will. So, your needs should not come into this conversation. Like I said, my needs. if I went with that alone, General would still be working. He would. Alexandra can do a lot that General cannot do, but she cannot tell me if I'm about to stop breathing. So I had to do what's best for General. We as handlers need to do what's best for our dogs. And then I hear this again because this is another phrase that you'll hear a lot in this conversation whenever it comes to retiring a dog or washing a dog after an incident. But Dawn, you don't understand. I need my dog. Actually, as I just said, I understand all too well. That's Alexandra with her bone. But again, our needs don't factor into this conversation. Our needs should come second to what our dogs need. So, how did I come to this hard choice to retire General? A little over a year ago, the week after Christmas, just before we rang in the new year of 2023, I called to General that we were going on an errand run. Normally, it'd be like, mention a car ride and boom, he's off the bed. He's at the door before I can even turn around. He was on the dog bed that I have in the living room, and I set it, and I got all the way through the door, and I looked back because he's not at the door for once. And he looked at me, and he had this look on his face that if he could speak, it would have been that's all right, Mom. It's too cold. I think I'll stay right here. You got it. He'd never done that before. Never. It was a cold week. That week, it was, I don't think it got out of the 20s, which, for some in the country, that might sound absolute heaven. But for where I live, I actually like to say that we get like 1 or 2 weeks of actual winter temperature-wise each winter. Normally, we have what I consider more spring and fall temperatures, and those below freezing temperatures for the day, 1-2 weeks max. So, and that just happened to be right there in our week of winter. So the temperatures that week were causing him to have so much pain that he wasn't able to hide it that day. Again, remember I said that dogs are actually very good at hiding pain. So the fact that he was not able to hide it that day, that was a red flag for me. As a result, I did some soul searching and decided that since I already had a pup that I had hoped to train as my husband's seizure alert service dog, but she had, as of yet, and even to this day, she has not shown any ability to detect his seizures. And so my husband and I chose to continue her training as a service dog, but with my tasks in mind instead of his. Since we were following the My Service Dog and Me program, which doesn't focus on task training until the pup is at least 1 year old, we were only working on foundations that would come into play at that point, working on various games that would be translated into tasks later on. At that point, she was only 7 months old, going on 8, so she wasn't training for work-specific tasks as of yet. As the year progressed, I started to go on more and more solo training trips with her, while teaching my first dog the joys of being a dog left home without a pup around to disturb him. It got to the point, though, with all of the dirty looks and, feeling guilty and trying to sneak out the door, but not really sneaking out the door because you don't really sneak out the door. It got to the point where I started to bribe him to be left home alone. So I would, give him chicken legs from the fridge so that he'd eventually, even now, he gets excited when he sees the baby loaded up without him because he knows he's getting chicken, raw chicken, never cooked chicken. You never give cooked chicken legs or chicken bones, period, after they've been cooked because they are more likely to splinter and can cause abdominal issues. You don't want to have to go to the vet. And even if it may not have happened for you up to now, it's one of those things, why risk it? And, there's no vet that will tell you that it's a good idea to give cooked chicken bones to your dog. But, so now, like tomorrow, we're going on a training day with a service dog trainer that's going to, I've hired to kind of help tighten up Alexandra's training a little bit as she's getting closer to the end of her 2 years. So tomorrow, whenever I get ready to leave, he will get his chicken leg and he will be happy about it. But I was fortunate, and I won't pretend that I wasn't. I already had a pup that not only was picked out, not only was brought home, but I had already partially trained at that point. But I would still have had to work towards retirement for General, even without Alexandra. And that means that I'd be working on using even more of my personal coping skills for the rest of my disabilities, not just using them for my respiratory condition, which now has me constantly checking my O2 levels and taking oxygen with me everywhere I go to take a hit whenever my levels, aren't high enough for safety's sake. Something that even with my service dog that I have now, I still have to do. But this is just one more example of why all of us handlers need to be willing and able to use our coping skills, even when we do have a service dog, because our dogs can always get ill. And there may be other reasons why we can't take them with us at any given time. I've already discussed one. Alexandra is my first female, and she is intact, which means she will have heat cycles. How many each year has yet to be determined. She is from a line that typically only goes into heat once a year, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that she has inherited that from her mother and her grandmother and her great grandmother. But during the time when she's in heat, I will be using my alternative coping mechanisms. These are things that we really need to have in place even before we get our service dogs. And we need to be willing and able to use them even when we do have our service dogs, because let's say you're going to, I don't know, let's say you want to go to a concert. All right. Dogs can go to concerts, but sometimes they may not be the safest environment. Let's say you have someone that is going to give you tickets for your birthday, and you're going to be up close right there where most people are standing room only kind of deal, because everybody's they want to have their hands, close enough to be able to touch the celebrities on stage. And, this may be like a trip in a lifetime for you, but that may not be the safest place for your dog, because let's face it, whenever people are at wild and crazy concerts, they're not exactly looking around or down to see what they may be stepping on. And alcohol and other substances tend to flow a little freely at some concerts. So again, that would be a situation where it may not be the safest, and that would be a time where it would be better to use a service human, someone who's going to be able to help you should you need it. Or let's say you need a service dog for whenever you are out and about, but you have a job that is not the safest, or it would not be a reasonable accommodation to bring your dog with you to work. Or, you may choose, even if they were going to, let's say you work at Lowe's, which is pet friendly. And I know that many people have their dogs at Lowe's whenever they work with their service dogs. That is a personal choice, but someone else, they may, their store may have a reputation of irresponsible pet owners bringing their dogs in off leash all the time. And let's say you've had a couple close encounters with your service dog and pets. At one point, you may decide, until I can find me a better job or a different job where I can have my dog with me safely, I'm going to start leaving my dog at home. I've actually seen this in one of my groups, my North Carolina group, actually. I run Service Dogs of North Carolina, and someone works at a drugstore. And, typically you don't really think about the dangers of pets coming into drugstores. But this individual has had several run-ins where pets have come in and have ended up behind the counter, and it has not been a safe place for their dog. So they have made the hard choice of leaving their dog at home because it's not safe for their dog. I admire this. This woman has placed her dog's health and safety above that of her own. And us handlers, we need to strive for that. But so using those coping mechanisms while we are retiring our dogs and looking for that next prospect, because let's be honest, even if you have to retire your dog today and someone gives you a puppy tomorrow, that dog's not going to be reliable right out the gate. So you're still going to have to be able to use your individual coping skills. So long story short, I will try to go ahead and close this out, but in essence, the beginning point to start this discussion really needs to happen before you even get the dog. And then reevaluate ever so often. Again, it starts with, especially like a Great Dane. They're very popular whenever it comes to mobility dogs now, but they do have a very short lifespan. I think their lifespan is 5 to 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's what I've been told. Reason I know the German Shepherds are 7 to 10 years is because I have looked into it, because again, that was my breed of choice before I ended up with a German Shepherd mix. So, and that's, I've also looked at German Shepherds' life expectancies to try to gauge what his life expectancy would be with the fact that he's 50% German Shepherd. So it may not be, 100% accurate. He may end up being 16 years old because he's got smaller dogs in him too. But those are not going to be good quality of life years any longer with his arthritis. So even if he was to live to being 16 years old, it would not be wise to work him, even though, he's only 6 years old now. So he could end up living half of his life retired at this point. But again, that is, one thing to look at even before getting that dog. And I've, looked in with Alexandra with boxers, and I've looked to make sure that her line actually tends to live a little bit longer than the life expectancy of the average boxer. I've seen her great greats. She has some great greats that are 11 and 12, which is long for a boxer. So I have that in the back of my head whenever it comes time in a few years, when it's time to start looking for her successor, so that she will be able to enjoy her retirement, even though she's not even 2 years old right now. I'm already looking towards that eventuality. And each year, I will be placing a little bit of money into a small fund so that whenever it comes time so that she can retire, I will have that money ready to be like, okay, it's time to start looking at her her successor, it's time for me to find my next puppy, because I'm not going to ethically be able to say, well, I can't afford for you to retire right now. I know that you're, getting on up in years, but it is what it is. So yeah, the discussion comes before we even bring the dog home, and it's not just a one-time discussion. It's one that should be renewed, because things may change. You may be on your 4th Labrador Retriever, so you felt like you've had it down pat exactly how long you have, almost down to the day of when you need to be able to look for your next puppy. But your dog number 4 may end up with cancer. Your dog number 4 may be in a car accident. Your dog number 4, whenever it's only 2.5 years old, may end up in a car accident. I think I just said that, but may end up being attacked. So it can no longer handle working. It may develop PTSD. And yes, our dogs can develop PTSD from car accidents, from being attacked, a wide variety of things. So we need to be ready. And even if we are not financially ready, we need to be mentally ready to retire our dogs when our dogs need to be retired, not when we are physically able to retire them. Because again, they don't have any choice in the matter as to whether or not we've saved up, that we've been fiscally responsible, and that we looked into their future for them. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up a 401k plan for your pup. Go ahead and start planning for their retirement. And I know quite a few people who are bringing home puppies in the next few months. Sounds weird, but just like whenever parents bring home their first child from the hospital, many times they'll go ahead and open up a savings plan for their child's college fund. So in many respects, our service dogs do sometimes feel like our children. So open up their retirement fund for them as soon as you start bringing them home, and have the or just make it where it's even a fund, because we all should also be doing this as well for their veterinary bills and stuff like that. Because I also hear a lot of times where people will say, well, they can't take their dog to the vet because they can't afford it, even though their dog has possibly gotten a broken limb, or they're ill. That goes again with the whole, we're supposed to be looking out for them because they look out for us. It's part of why we're a team. So with that, I know I kind of rambled and I kind of veered off course a little bit, but maybe someone who's going to be listening to this needs to hear this. So I hope to be recording with a very good friend. We'll have to set a time. I know an individual through some of the service dog pages that I have set up with for my next interview, and our planned interview is going to be about going to things such as Comic Cons. They have a lot of experience with this. They actually volunteer at some of the Comic Cons and some of the other big cons around the nation. So I look forward to hearing what she has to say, and I hope that you do as well. And if you want to be apprised of when that video is uploaded, like I said before, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and please share this to anyone that you feel may appreciate this kind of content. And if you feel that you have someone that would be interested in coming on and being interviewed and being part of the show, please reach out. And for anyone else who has an interest in this, landscape of trying to start the show, I'm even open to having a co-host, or for a time or two, or if we get along very well, who knows? But like I said before as well, hit me up on X or on Facebook. My email is at thatservicedogshow@yahoo.com. And until next time, go and give some loves to those pups and let them know that you're going to start them a retirement fund.